Deputy Speaker.
Please be seated. Now come to notices of motion. Does any member wish to give a notice for a motion?
Thank you, Speaker. I hereby move amendments on nation building and social cohesion.
Thank you. Any other member? The motion?
Empowering women to deal with gender inequality in the legal and political system. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much.
For the Democratic Alliance, that this House debates the state of local government.
Thank you. Any notice of motion?
On behalf of the IFP, that this House debate the importance of urgently rolling out.
Thank you. Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable. Dispute resolution mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move at the next sitting of the following motion, that the House debates the impact of corruption and...
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hereby give notice that agriculture, forest and fisheries should play in ensuring that fruit industry.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In its next sitting of the House debates placing provision of water
at the back.
Enterprises.
Ek wil hiermee namens die Demokratiese Alliansie om seker te maak dat alle werklose persone kans het om in diens geneem te word en om seker...
Speaker, I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting the House debate promoting social cohesion, social integration and social inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there more notices? No. We now come to motions without notice. Are there any motions without notice? Honourable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes with sadness the death of 91-year-old struggle veteran Umama Vesta Smith on Monday, the 9th of September 2013, after a long illness. Further notes that Mavi, as she was affectionately known in Soweto, served the African National Congress with humility, commitment and integrity since 1950s and was a great freedom fighter. Remembers that Mavi worked closely with Mama Albertina and Tata Walter Sisulu and was detained in terms of the Internal Security Act at the Old Fort in 1976 with the likes of Mama Winnie Mandela and Mama Fatima Mie. Further remembers that she attended the Congress of the People, the real one, in Kliptown in 1955 and was part of the 1956 Women's March. Recalls that she was honored in Cape Town on August 30 by the Legal Resource Center, one of several organizations she had served in her prime. Further believes that Mama Vesta was a gift to the ANC who never had second thoughts about working for the movement even in difficult times. And we conveyed our deepest condolences to the family, cadres, relatives and friends. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chief Whip. If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objection, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that South African Nick Sloan led the team that successfully salvaged the wreck of the Costa Concordia cruise liner on the 17th of September 2013. Also notes that this was the biggest salvage operation for a passenger liner ever undertaken. Further notes with concern that the 290-meter and 114,000-ton vessel, which ran aground off the Italian island of Giglio on 13 January 2012, killed 32 people. recognises Nick Sloan's contribution in leading the team that completed this feast and congratulates Nick Sloan on his achievement. I so move.
If there are no objection, I put the motion. No objection, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Deputy Chairman? Deputy Chief Whip?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House knows that September 21 each year, the United Nations International Day of Peace is celebrated. Further notes that this day recognizes the efforts of those who have worked hard to end conflict and promote peace, and is also a day of ceasefire, personal or political. Acknowledges that the 2013 International Day of Peace theme is Education for Peace, and calls on all to use this year's theme to raise the political profile of education and strengthen the global movement to achieve quality education. I thank you.
If there are no objection, I put the motion. No objection, agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? Honourable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move in the name of my Chief Whip. I move without notice that the House notes that the 7th of September 2013 marked 21 years since the occurrence of the 1992 Bisho massacre in the then Bandustan of Ciskei. That the House recognizes the 27 gallant patriots who laid down their lives and many heroes and heroines who were wounded during that fateful protest march. That the House further recognizes with great sadness the brave souls who paid the ultimate price to liberate many who had to endure the brutal repression of the Ciskei's military government. That the House acknowledges their brave contribution to the freedom we enjoy as South Africans to this day. And lastly, that the House conveys its gratitude to the victims of the Bisho massacre and the appreciation of the nation for the liberation achieved through the sacrifices they made. And goes.
If there are no objection, I put the motion. No objection, agreed to. Any further motion?
Thank you. I move without notice that the House notes that South African Mr. Alan Fleming and the fish farm in the Western Cape were shortlisted from over 800 entries, ranging from 90 countries in the Siemens Stifting's Global Empowering Peoples Award. Also notes that the fish farm is the world's first profitable mobile aquaculture business using 12-meter-long shipping containers to produce 4 tons of fish annually. Also notes that the award was first launched at the UN Summit for Sustainable Development in June 2012 to recognize developers around the world that create simple tech innovations to promote sustainable development. Congratulates Mr. Alan Fleming and the fish farm on their achievement and wish him and the fish farm well when the winner is announced on the 30th of October in Nairobi.
If there are no objection, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Any further motions? Honourable Member.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes the passing on of Comrade Robert Mtombeni, an administrator at Palabura Municipality. He served the ANC tirelessly and will be missed. I thank you.
If there what do we do? Is that, Honourable Member, is that the motion without notice, or it's a notice of a motion?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, it's a motion without notice. I thank you.
Can it be brought forward? Yeah? Okay. The first item, whilst we're waiting for the motion, the first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Honorable Chief Whip.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I move that the House suspends Rule 253, subsection 1, which provides inter alia that the debate on the second reading of the bill may not commence before at least 3 working days have elapsed since the committee's report was tabled for the purposes of conducting the second reading debate today on electoral amendment bill of the Assembly. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The next item on the order paper is member statement. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement?
Thank you, Speaker. The ANC once again, the people have shown their support for the party which they believe will deliver a better life for them. And once again, they rejected the DA. The ANC won the by-election in Ward 6 and 18 in Tlokwe in the Northwest Province yesterday. In an apparent attempt to save face, the DA once again shows its arrogance and disrespect for the poorest of the poor by claiming unjustly that the ANC bought votes by distributing food parcels, by believing that our people have so little respect for themselves that they can be bought with food parcels, shows the extent to which the DA is out of touch with the many citizens of our country. By insinuating that our people lack the capacity to distinguish between a party which advocates for the poor and marginalized in this country, and one which argues for opportunity society to ensure that the elite retain their privileges, the DA exposes their misguided thinking. It has also come to light, Speaker, that onlookers saw 3 DA members, and might I add, were heavily armed, 2 males and a female, allegedly handing out stacks of cash last night to the independent candidate of Ward 26, Mr. Stone Matlabi, for winning the ward for them. The very people you paid used violence and intimidation, grabbed ANC t-shirts from old defenseless people. There was no effort to conceal the handover, and we will ensure that it is investigated. It is proven that if it is proven that Mr. Stone Matlabi sold out his supporters to the DA, who obviously...
Thank you, Honourable Member. Your time is up. DA.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the results of the by-elections held across South Africa yesterday show that the DA continues to win new support from South Africans who have not previously voted for us before. The DA has experienced significant growth in every by-election we have contested since 2013. The DA retained its wards in eThekwini and Mossel Bay, and we grew our support in Drakenstein, Merafong and Tlokwe. The results in Merafong and Tlokwe are particularly noteworthy. In Merafong, the DA received 24.37% of the vote, which was up from 10.63% in 2011. This growth is good news for the DA's campaign to win Gauteng in 2014. More and more voters in Gauteng are choosing the DA to create jobs, stamp out corruption and deliver services to all, things the ANC are incapable of doing. In the hotly contested Tlokwe by-election, the significant increase in the DA's support is an endorsement of our performance in government in Tlokwe over the last 10 weeks. The DA won 35.57% of the vote, despite the ANC's intensive vote buying and disgusting ZANU-PF-style intimidation campaign. These results bode well for the DA for the 2014 national election. We will continue to work hard to win new votes by offering the real alternative for the citizens of this country.
Thank you, Honourable Member Cope.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. According to the Auditor General report, many municipalities are regressing. The late former Minister of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, Sicelo Sixeka, admitted to the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, in 2009 that many of our municipalities are in a state of paralysis and dysfunction. He made Northwest as a benchmark of local municipality paralysis. In 2013, the SIU report exposes corruption, maladministration, lack of capacity, fraud, and mismanagement. Political instability in main local municipality and government in the Northwest Province. COPE calls on the officials in positions to take much more responsibility for the promises they make and the expectations they create. Investigations and action against those who found guilty of various transgressions needs to be taken as quickly possible to avoid spending public funds unwisely. Thank you.
ANC.
This. Deputy Speaker, I'm sorry. The African National Congress welcomes the release of the National Crime Statistics by the Ministry of South African Police Services in Pretoria today. Over the past 19 years, the ANC has worked tirelessly in reducing the crime rates, making South Africa a better place to live in for its citizens, visitors, asylum seekers, and investors. Whilst we appreciate the drop in sexual assault and contact crimes, the increase in murder and attempted murder and property-related crimes is a great cause of concern. And whilst the rape levels have decreased slightly, we still consider one rape as one too many. We will continue to remain focused and consolidate our efforts to ensure that the safety and security of all our citizens is guaranteed. We call on individual citizens, communities, and stakeholders to work with our police in order to achieve a crime-free country. We must mobilize our communities to make sure that criminals have no space to hide and prey in our neighborhoods. We salute the police for their work and commitment. I thank you.
IFP.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, on Friday, 104-year-old Marquardt Hospital is set to close, mainly because negotiations between the Provincial Health Department and the hospital's board have failed. The reduction in funding, specifically when the department refused to renew the annual subsidy to the hospital, has now forced the hospital to close its doors. This will mean that all hospital staff will be unemployed, but the greatest casualty will be Durban's poor, as they were the main recipients of healthcare services. It is unacceptable that this hospital is being allowed to close down, and the Provincial Health Department should have ensured that this closure does not happen. As we celebrate Heritage Day on the 24th September, the Durban Provincial Health Department should be treating Marquardt Hospital as part of Durban's heritage, as it has been operating for 104 years. All avenues should be exhausted before allowing such a hospital to shut down, because it means we are neglecting the preserve the very heritage we claim to celebrate, while removing accessible health care from the reach of the poor. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. UTM. UTM.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The UDM is very concerned about the manner in which government and the Minister of Higher Education are handling the crisis at the Walter Sissoon University. If not for the intervention of civil society under the leadership of the South African Council of Churches, the current crisis would have escalated beyond the point of no return. It is an indictment of the Minister of Minister Nzimande that our President had to dispatch Minister Chabane to clean up his colleague's backyard. However, after an agreement was reached to end the 7-week-long strike, we hear that classes are disrupted yet again. The allegations are that government is negotiating in bad faith and has reneged on its promises. The UDM is of the view that Minister Nzimande has failed to attend to the WUSU challenges, which include but are not limited to not intervening in the labor dispute timelessly, not reporting on his department's turnaround strategy for the university, whether its budget allocation is adequate, whether the salaries of academics and workers are competitive. Allegations are that local companies are overlooked for university business. The university calls on government to urgently resolve the crisis at WUSU because a day lost in a student's learning is a day too many. Thank you.
ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC welcomes the finding of a report released by the South African Institute of Race Relations tracking the performance of black people in the economy and broader society over several decades, with a special emphasis on the post-1994 period. The report asserts that the widely held notion that racial transformation in South Africa has failed is not true, although the report acknowledges that much still needs to be done to create opportunities for black people. The report highlights, and to name but a few, firstly, that the number of black African people in employment has doubled since 1994. Secondly, that the proportion of black people, black, African, colored, and Indian in top management jobs has almost doubled since 2000, from 13 to 24%. The proportion of judges who are black has increased from 25 to 62% since 2000, and that the average individual monthly earnings from employment of black Africans have increased by more than 90% since 2006. This report vindicates the ANC and reaffirms our assertion that 20 years into our democracy, the ANC has made much progress in improving the quality of lives of our people. However, we recognize that in order to meet the goals of our revolution and the new challenges facing us, we need to grow the economy so that we're able to meet the needs of our people, create more decent work opportunities and sustainable livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you. ACDP.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The ACDP notes President Jacob Zuma last week conceded that South Africa remains off track when it comes to meeting its promise 2 years ago of creating 5 million jobs by 2020. President Zuma told the NCOP that 750,000 jobs have been created since government's new growth path came into being, certainly not the rate at which the majority of South Africans would have hoped for. Entrepreneurship, particularly amongst the youth of our nation, is a necessity, Madam Deputy Speaker. A small business enterprise results in the creation of new services. The ACDP notes the concern that the sector with the highest unemployment figures is within the youth of our country. Madam Deputy Speaker, the ACDP does not just identify problems but also provide solutions, which are the need to increase our support in the rural and semi-rural business sectors. Instead of granting tenders for the building of houses for the poor, we should employ and train the poor to build their own homes in order to improve our unenviable status as the most unequal nation in the world, as indicated by our Gini coefficient. More jobs must be created. Triple BEE is a misnomer in itself, as it caters only for a narrow band of well-connected individuals. Madam Speaker, as a solution-orientated party, the ACDP would propose that a money management and savings be incorporated into the education curriculum from grades 1 to 12. I thank you.
DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, last week the Public Enterprises portfolio was briefed on the latest SAA turnaround strategy. While appreciative that the plan was brought to Parliament, it was concerning that critical information was not provided, including the following: how much the turnaround will cost, will it result in job losses, plans on cuts, and whether or not SA Express, SAA and Mango Airline would be merging. following a statement I released regarding my concerns, Mr. Matlole Swete tweeted, and I quote, "But all these areas were presented in the Portfolio Committee." The next day, however, CEO Monwabasi Kalawe was reported stating that details on routes, recapitalization, a time frame on return to profit, and company mergers could not yet be provided. When asked why we are not deliberately keeping information from this committee, we are respecting protocol. What protocol, I ask this House today? It is protocol that portfolio committees are given all information that they require to exercise their constitutional mandate of oversight, including plans with costing and timeframes against which performances can be measured. Let us not allow fairy to dictate our mandate given to us by the people of South Africa.
ANC.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC welcomes the publishing of the new draft Minimum Norms and Standards for School Infrastructure by Basic Education Ministry. All education stakeholders are expecting regulations and provide comment to the department by the 11th October 2013. As pointed out by the Minister, the objectives of the regulations were to guide the provisioning of an enabling physical teaching and learning environment that is sustainable and equitable for all pupils in South Africa. Certain norms and standards, namely the availability of classrooms, electricity, water and sanitation, and perimeter security are to be prioritized. These norms and standards are crucial for a conducive school environment. Members of the Executive Council of Provincial Education Departments will also be required to annually provide the Minister with detailed plans on the manner on the implementation of their plans. The ANC support this initiative by the Minister of Basic Education. Thank you.
IFP.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Independent Electoral Commission continues to find itself making headlines for all the wrong reasons, casting doubt on its expected independent credibility and integrity. The scenario saw the light of day and the by-election has been postponed indefinitely. In Abakut, an important inquiry as to how an official allowed this to happen, the response was simply, they are tired. The Electoral Court had to reverse this grave democratic injustice. To tighten on the voter registration procedures, it has refused to do so. The question is to safeguard its due processes against doubt and mistrust, the credibility, freeness and fairness of the nation, tarnishing its image.
Thank you. To the local radio station has uncovered what appears to be blatant disregard. Station, Africa News Network 7. 7 and working for ANN 7, competing with the best there is. During the World Cup in 2010, SABC was broadcast and to work with foreign employees. When it comes to the Gupta TV network, however, South Africa is going to believe that our Home Affairs Department has failed to respond to the allegations of the flouting of
ANC.
The African, by which past 3 years, the students experience on the campus. In spite of DASO bringing in their DA leaders, voted for the organization which have their best interest in heart. SASCO's visit has been clearly
DA.
Honourable Deputy, for Cuban engineers to South Africa. Any progress and skills welcomed. However, Minister Malewa needs to tell the millions of South Africans the nation is in crisis. In fact, has the highest rate of waterborne disease. The Minister needs to account to the rural poor why the Learning Academy, with 1,072 interns, has yet to deliver anything since 2000.
ANC.
He said this after agreeing to pay the SARS 706.7 million to settle his test debt. Income Tax Act of 1958 of 62. In response, fair in their dealings with me once I fully engaged with them. I accept the fact that I have been and asked to explain their tax affairs. The correct measure of action is to seek an early resolution legislation and a concerted effort not to unlawfully shift tax obligation offshore. In defense of disputes raised by SARS is indeed a constitutional right. However, it should.
That concludes the member statements. Honorable Mulewa.
Rise to speak to the motion or the statement around the so-called part was not the first one to be signed in this country. And it was not the first time that we brought sector in this sector of war. We would like to also remind you that no statement has ever been made that there are a recruitment process to find those specialists that we need in this country. Those specialists, we will tell you, that's what I said. In case you ask the question how much it will cost, even that amount will tell you at that time. Now, the second thing that I really want to also indicate there is that we expect even the DA in this country to at least be saying to us that this is what we think should be done in order for companies that are linked to you, that you are also in charge of, to absorb some of the young professionals who are in this country, who are suffering, who have certificated, but who are able to be trained as professional engineers, because those companies are not able to take them in and actually train them and mentor them. Minister Bladen Zimande is now working on a whole program of ensuring that within the sector of training, not only in universities, but also in FET colleges, there is this practical training that must happen. Those are some of the measures that we are taking.
Honorable Minister, thank you very much. Your time is up. Honorable Kikaba.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. With regard to the SAA turnaround strategy, we would like to inform the House that, one, there are elements of the strategy which can't be disclosed precisely because they constitute commercially sensitive information which would be detrimental to the interests of the airline if they were to be made public and thus to fall in the hands of the competitors of the airline. Secondly, the plan is at this present moment being embedded into the shareholder compact of SAA with the department, together with the corporate plan for 2013-2014. But the interesting thing, Honorable Deputy Speaker, is that the people complaining the most about SAA don't fly SAA. The public mandate they are talking about, they don't understand because they don't use SAA, they don't have confidence in SAA. In actual fact, if you were to place SAA in their hands,
Honorable members, please.
They would long have disposed of it, destroyed jobs, and disposed of critical capabilities that are owned by the state via South African Airways. The people of South Africa have faith in SAA. And that is why they expect us to undertake the measures we are undertaking to turn the airline around. And that is why they have supported us in the measures we have taken to protect 11,000 jobs and to ensure that this airline continues to bring Africa, to bring the world into Africa and take Africa to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Deputy Minister Tobias. Order, honorable members, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The statement made by the Honourable Member of the ACDP misinterprets the report by the President on our government's job targets. First and foremost, the Honourable Member should appreciate the economic challenges that are there the world over. And secondly, the Honourable Member should appreciate, again, the interventions that government is making on youth employment. A few months ago, all stakeholders met in Soweto and signed a youth accord committing themselves in playing a role in youth economic development, and the ACDP was absent. Thirdly, the issue that he is raising on rural youth, we are already addressing as I'm rolling out youth economic outreach programs in all provinces, in particular in rural areas, to help youth to access the DTI products. And for small enterprise, we are also concentrating on BBBE. And BBBE is not only rolled in cities, but it's also rolled in rural areas. I will therefore appreciate if the Honourable Member can join me when I go to Coffee Fontaine, Mokhwase, and Sisonke to experience the DTI's outreach programs. And Honourable Speaker, the ANC-led government is hard at work, and no effort by those gunning for votes will erase the work of the ANC. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable Deputy Minister Sokyu.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. To the member of ANC, Memolebats, Raleboa Holo, Kadipalo Paloteo, Saboshoko tse re utlwileng letona le ile tsa dihlaisa moyeng maobane le ka jekulena re batla ho bontsha hore ha ine se ka tshebedisana mmoho ya rona le setjhaba ho no go sena tsela ya gore bo bomba bohlokotsebe re ka bohlola empa ra dumela gore hona le bongata be re tshwantse hore re boetse jwalo ka o bone hore ha re tla tabeng ya murder, attempted murder, house breaking, business breaking, ntse re tshwanetse hore re bona hore sebetsa ka matla mo hobaneng bofokodi bo ntse bo le teng empa ra ile boha tshebedisano mmoho ya rona le setjhaba a ke a le bona.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. That concludes, if there are no other responses, which are to Honourable Oliphant. And, yeah.
Ngiyabonga Sekela Somlomo. Sekela Somlomo, umhlonishwa lapha ngaphesha we-DA uthe, i-DA idelivela bonke abantu. Ngiyafisa ukwazi ukuthi ngabe abantu base-Loris Pass, nabantu basembekweni, nabantu base Mitchells Plain, bangakusho yini ukuthi i-DA ya deliver la e-Western Cape. I'm saying this because bengisembekweni on Saturday and Sunday, ngabase Loris Pass, abantu bakhona bahlala emjondolo anytime. And EDA during a campaign ku Ward 6 embekweni beyisa ama food parcels naba t-shirts. Abantu bathe bafuna ama t-shirts ka African National Congress because they know ukuthi ANC umbutho wabantu. Ngakho ke abasukuzoza la bezokhohlisa umphakathi waseMzantsi Afrika ukuthi baya deliver bebe behlulwa yindawo ezingaphansi komasipala wase Western Cape. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I rise to comment on the statement by the Honourable Klengwa. My understanding of the matter, Deputy Speaker and members, is that the official in question has been suspended, and we are assured that investigations are underway. We wish to thank the IEC for the swift manner in which they've responded in this regard. And I want to take this opportunity to remind members of this Honourable House that indeed the IEC employs thousands and thousands of people, and one swallow does not a summer make. I think we must be, and we must urge members and leaders to be tempered when we cast aspersions on a body as important as the IEC. Likewise, I also wish to assure the Honourable Member McIntosh that only once our investigations are complete in relation to the matter that he raises will we communicate both our findings and any possible action that we intend taking against any of our officials. We wish to reassure the honourable member that if any of our officials is found to have acted improperly, we shall not hesitate to throw the proverbial book at him. Thank you very much, or her. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable members, that concludes ministerial responses. We reached the 6. Honourable members, I want to go back to the last item on the motions without a notice. It has since been confirmed that the statement made by Honourable member was not meant to constitute a motion without notice and will therefore not be captured in the minutes of the House. The Secretary will read the first order of the House.
Consideration of recommendation for appointment of 12 non-executive members of the South African Broadcasting Corporation SABC Board.
The chairperson of the committee, Honourable Kolwana, will introduce the report. Honourable Kolwana.
How are you? Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker, honourable members, Deputy President, my colleagues and our guests. It is with great utmost humility that I present to the House for consideration the report of the Portfolio Committee on Communications, which was adopted on the 17th of September. This report includes, amongst other things, the finalized list for candidates to serve in the SABC board. Indeed, with the appointment of the SABC board, the process to rebuild the public broadcaster has begun in earnest. It is therefore safe to say that the ANC resolution in relation to the SABC are on track, and this is but just a foundation block towards ensuring that we achieve the objectives of the public broadcaster as articulated in the Charter of the Corporation and later in the African National Congress 53rd National Conference Resolution. Honourable members, I'm convinced that the caliber of candidates we have interviewed is the testament of the quality and depth that our country is blessed with. And more importantly, it reflects the kind of patriotism needed to drive our country forward. It is indeed unfortunate that because of the limited number of candidates, we could not accommodate all the candidates. From a procedure point of view, the committee advertised call for nomination. 147 nominations were received. 37 were shortlisted. Unfortunately, one withdrew. We only interviewed 36. Following the interviews of the 36, on the 20th to the 23rd, on the 22nd of August, and later from the 27th to the 28th of August in Joburg, the committee resolved that the House, in accordance with Section 13 of the Broadcasting Act, recommend to the President the following candidates to be appointed as non-executive members of the SABC board. Are you ready for the names? Ms. Rachel Kalidas, Ms. Ellen Zandile Chabalala, Mr. King Bonagele, Mr. Vusmuzi Mavuso, Ms. Nomvuyo Mhlakaza, Mr. Ronnie Lubisi, Professor Bongani Kumalo, Professor Obet Maguve, Mr. Krish Naidu, Dr. Aaron Chizumba, Ms. Nolutando Kosa, Ms. Hope Zinde. Say it loud, say it loud. We are ruling, we're the ruling part. We should be proud of that. Say it loud. In an article written by Thabo Mkona on the 18th of September 2013, which appears in the Time Lives, it seems there is a consensus about this board within the labor movement and also the SOS coalition. I quote, The board members are the right people for the job. They are experienced enough, well-equipped and skilled. This is a very strong team by CW. Many of those recommended are extremely experienced in the turnaround of institutions. The SABC problem are structural and historical, and the new board will only be part of the solution by SOS collusion. Not us, close quote. What do you want more? We deliver as a ruling party. That's why the Labour, the coalition is supporting this board. Indeed, honorable members, once again, I must express my sincere gratitude to the committee members and the support staff of the committee for commitment, diligence, and the sterling work during the entire process. Indeed, all parties, they've got internal political process for mandate. What's your problem? We've got ours in the ANC, you've got yours in DA, COPE, and so on. What's the problem? Lastly, I appreciate the opportunity to present to the House the outcome of the SABC board interviews process and its outcomes for consideration by this House. Are you ready? Are you ready to support the African National Congress? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kolwana. Are there any objection to the approval of the recommendation? Request for declaration of vote have been received. I will now allow up to 3 minutes, one member of each party wishing to make a declaration, an opportunity to do so. Jay?
Honourable colleagues, today this House is poised to betray South Africans' right to freedom of expression and journalistic and creative independence through our public broadcaster, rights that are fundamental to the SABC Charter and enshrined in the Constitution. We are about to endorse the ANC's choice for the SABC board. The ANC would not compromise on the list it presented to the Portfolio Committee on Communications. It refused to consider any name offered by the opposition parties. While the ANC list includes people who are competent and whom the opposition party supported in the spirit of democratic negotiations, it does not represent the best choice of appropriate skills and experience that was available. Many experienced, appropriately skilled, vibrant and young South Africans offered to use their talents and commitment to good corporate governance to salvage the SABC. These people, for whom the opposition parties lobbied long and hard, were totally ignored by the ANC because they did not come with the nomination or endorsement of the leading faction of the ANC or its allies. Instead of acting in the best interests of our public broadcaster and the millions of people who listen to and watch the SABC's channels, the ANC has chosen people who will bend to the dictates of the skills-bereft executive management of the SABC and Luthuli House. The new board, viewed as a collective, will not have the necessary political independence, knowledge and experience to confidently honour their obligations under the Companies Act and other laws and regulations under which the SABC operates. We doubt they have the necessary experience to challenge the dictates of SABC's management should it embark on initiatives that threaten the broadcaster's financial sustainability, erode its asset base and compromise its integrity in news and programming. Our argument is not with the individuals on this list, but with the ANC. It has put party affiliation above the Broadcasting Act's requirements for the board to comprise a broad cross-section of South Africa's population and collectively to have qualifications and experience in the required fields. Most of the best available appropriately skilled and experienced people representing a broad range of committed South Africans are not on the ANC's list. Today, this House is about to be party to abandoning the principles and values of the SABC Charter as a public broadcaster. We, honourable colleagues, are about to hand over control of the SABC to the ANC. The SABC will become a state broadcaster, subject to the whims of a ruling faction of the ANC. The political interference that has increasingly brought the SABC into disrepute and disarray during the past 20 years is set to continue. The Democratic Alliance rejects the ANC's list for the SABC board.
Thank you, Honourable Member. ANC.
So what?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the ANC supports the nomination of the names presented to this House today. In terms of compliance with the Broadcasting Act, Section 13, 4A-B-C-D of the Act, the above names of the candidates we are recommending to the House today for appointment by the President, when viewed collectively, are persons who are suited to serve on the board by virtue of their qualifications. Expertise, experience in the broadcasting policy and technology, broadcasting regulations, media law, business practice and finance, marketing, journalism, entertainment and education, social and labor issues. Persons who are committed to fairness, freedom of expression, the right of the public to be informed, the openness and accountability on the part of those holding public office, represent a broad cross-section of the population of the Republic, and are persons who are committed to the objects and principles as enunciated in the Charter of the Corporation. It is clear from above, therefore, in terms of the skills diversity needed from board members, the committee had a clear mandate to ensure that the above-mentioned criteria is met to the latter, and all political parties were in agreement of compliance with the Broadcasting Act. I'm surprised, what are they saying today? I am confident that the nominated candidates cover all the skills, requisites and spelled out in the Act, unless the opposing parties identify a particular skills gap. The nominated candidates complement one another and will diversify the board as mandated. The ANC has the right, like all other political parties, to have internal processes that enable it to take consensus decisions based on the party position. In fact, the opposition parties requested on numerous occasions of their need to consult with party caucus for clarity's sake. I do not see why the ANC cannot be afforded the same privilege. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, just like before, the ANC in the Portfolio Committee showed that they cannot be trusted. They renege on agreements. The difference this time was that they did not buckle under pressure from Luthuli House, but they apparently received their orders from Honourable Bladen Zimande or Mr. Jeremy Cronin. The whole process of advertising, shortlisting and interviewing candidates for appointment to the SABC board was a sham, with hundreds of thousands of tax rands wasted on trooping the committee and 8 staff members to Johannesburg. Notwithstanding a decision to depoliticize the board and the selection process, the ANC again resorted to cadre deployment. The committee chair was extremely economical with the truth by accusing the opposition of throwing tantrums about a singular candidate. The truth is far from that, Deputy Speaker. We reached an agreement on candidates, including ANC candidates proposed, but they made a sudden about-turn this past week and refused to accept their earlier nominations, replacing them with a rigid slate of politically aligned comrades. They refused point blank to even accept one candidate supported exclusively by the opposition. Deputy Speaker, there is no doubt that the list before us does contain some good names. but the board lacks the collective skills, balance and independence to restore the credibility of the public broadcaster. Excellent candidates were rejected by the ANC. Blind loyalty and service in the ANC's higher echelons became the determining factor. The SABC will continue to remain in crisis. The truth is, the board and the management could not escape the factionalism prevalent in the ruling alliance during past years. If the SIU report's latest audit disclaimer and scandals of news manipulation and governance irregularities under the Ngubane board did not shake the ANC into action to remove politics from the business of the SABC, then nothing will. It is to be doubted that the SABC could be salvaged as spectacularly as the Costa Concordia earlier this week. Treasury gave it an initial lifeline and dictated the terms of the salvage operation. But the previous board did not control the salvage operation and it slipped back into deep water. The Costa Concordia, although damaged, will soon be ready to sail. But can the SABC be salvaged without the equivalent of a Nick Sloan engineering team? Cope wishes the board everything of the best. However, we believe their task will be much more difficult than the hauling of a stranded ship from the rocks.
Thank you,
we
Honourable
don't
Member. Your
need
time
manipulated news bulletins. We need an independent public broadcaster. Thank you.
IFP.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, when we embarked on the process of appointing a new board, we held the opportunity to appoint a fully non-partisan board. A new dawn seemed possible for the SABC. This is surely needed for another damning report by the Auditor General had shown that the rot runs deep in our public broadcaster. To stop the rot, we had to find the very best talent for the board. Many of the people nominated today fit this criteria. But the fact remains that stronger candidates were left out in favour of weaker ones. On this principle alone, I raise the IFP's objection with the board before us today. Sadly, at the last minute, the ruling party seemingly bowed to pressure to advance specific candidates, and expertise took a back seat. How else does one explain the appointment of a senior manager in the office of the NYDA? What exceptional skills made her the best in the pool? Or was it the fact that she's an ANC Youth League stalwart and married to an ANC MP over there, the overriding factor? Only time will tell. And more importantly, since we did not fully adhere to the sections of the Broadcasting Act, which compels us to pick South Africans of a broad cross-section of the population, and we did not tick all the boxes.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, may I ask the honourable member a question?
No, I'm not going to take your question.
I want to ask you how many...
No, she said she's not going to take the question.
I'm still
That's
busy,
what she
Chief
said.
Whip.
Continue, Honourable Member.
And more importantly, since we did not fully adhere to the sections of the Broadcasting Act, which compels us to pick South Africans of a broad cross-section of the population, and we did not tick all the boxes with regard to the fields from where they should be drawn, this possibly leaves the composition of this board open to legal scrutiny. Let us at least thank the entire SABC parliamentary team. I'm sorry I cannot mention all of them today, but they are led by senior journalists such as Ms. Isabel de Tyfler, Ms. Abra Barbier, Ms. Mercedes Percent, Ms. Lukanya Kalato, Ms. Lama Mache, Ms. Asanda Mbeche, and others. These individuals don't compromise the new board, but they and their colleagues are the unsung heroes of the SABC. Theirs is a labour of love for an institution that is routinely labelled as a national embarrassment. They deserve better. The IFP did not support all the names on the board, but their appointment is now a fait accompli. Therefore, in the spirit of how the IFP conducts its business, I would like to wish the board all the best. May you deliver to us an SABC that can deliver a service that would compel South Africans to pay their TV licenses, not leaving them feeling that it's not the right thing to do. We urge you to put aside any personal and political preferences and dedicate yourself to rebuilding one of South Africa's natural assets. It is now uncertain whether the SABC's sinking ship can be rescued, but on the basis of those members who hold South Africa's best interests at heart, may we live in hope. I thank you.
Honorable Cody.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, comrades and honorable members. Out of the more than 140 applicants, it is clear that if the APC had its preference, we would have a different list. And to therefore quibble about this or that name might not be a strategic issue at this point in time. Our main concern, however, is that those who are going to be appointed or recommended to the board must live up to their responsibility. We are aware that the previous two boards did not finish their terms, and it just cannot be right that a third board equally does not finish its term. They need to appreciate that they are getting into an SABC that has had problems for quite some time and is in the process of trying to turn itself around, and that their job should be to consolidate the momentum that is there and actually take the SABC to higher levels. They get into an SABC that has just received a negative audit outcome from the Auditor General, and their work is therefore cut out for them. So the call of the APC is that the members of the board must live up to their public responsibility, their public duty, and that the Minister of Communications as well as Parliament need to exercise their oversight over the board much more rigorously than we've done before, that at the slightest indication of problems in the board, Parliament and the Ministry must be able to step in to assist the board to avert the spectacle of the board disintegrating like the previous two boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Cody. I put the question again. Are there any objections to the approval of the recommendation? I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. And those against will say no. No. I think ayes have it. No. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the DA calls for the division.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Order, honorable members. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, honorable members, I called for order. Honorable members, I called for order. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the button. If a member presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as members vote when the voting session is closed by the chair. The question before the House is the approval of the recommendation for appointment of Ms. Kalidas, Ms. E.Z. Chabalala, Mr. Bonakele, Mr. Mavuso, Ms. Mhlakaza, Mr. Lubisi, Professor Kumalo, Professor Maguve, Mr. K. Naidu, Dr. Chizumba, Ms. Gosa, Ms. Zinde, as non-executive members of the SAB board be agreed to. Vote SABC. Oh. Are all members in their allocated seat? Voting will now start. Those in favor of the question being agreed to should press yes button. Yes. Those against should press no button. No. Those wishing to abstain should press abstain button. Yes. Have all members voted? Yes. Thank you. Voting session is now closed. The result of the division is as follows. Ayes 203, noes 78, and abstention 1. The recommended candidates are accordingly agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order.
Second reading debate, Electoral Amendment Bill.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, honourable members, this Act gives effect to 2 Constitutional Court judgments which are aimed at extending the opportunity to vote to categories of citizens who were previously excluded from casting their ballots. The 2 judgments are the Minister of Home Affairs versus Nikro, a 2004 judgment, and Richter versus Minister of Home Affairs in 2009. This bill proposes a special voting dispensation for registered voters who will not be in their voting districts on election day. In terms of this Act, voters will be able to apply and cast a special vote prior to election day due to the usual reasons of physical infirmity, It also provides for security and election officials who will have a similar opportunity. But importantly, any voter who would be outside the voting district on election day will be in a position to apply and cast a special vote at their voting station on the special voting day. In the 2009 case of Richter, the court held that all citizens who are outside of the Republic must be given an opportunity to vote if they notify the IEC of their intention to vote at a mission where they intend being on voting day. Therefore, this bill proposes a dispensation that will allow all South African citizens, regardless of where they reside, to vote. As I indicated, this extends and expands the opportunities for voters to participate in the political processes in South Africa. In the last national and provincial elections, although approximately 20,000 voters notified the IEC of their intention to vote outside the Republic, just over 9,000 actually availed themselves of this opportunity. The daily movement of South Africans in and out of the country for the period 1 September to 31st August 2013 is around 2.5 million for that entire period. So if you were to divide that, you're looking at around 20,000 on average per day. It is evident that a substantial number of South Africans do go outside of the country for a range of reasons. And certainly this opportunity that is being created in terms of the legislation will assist these citizens who are going to be away from their voting districts on election day. Such persons can now either apply to cast a special vote on the special voting day before they leave South Africa, or apply to cast a vote at a South African mission abroad on voting day. In order to give concrete meaning to the political space created by the bill, the Electoral Commission is establishing an international segment to the voters' roll. This means that South Africans who live abroad do not need to travel home for the purposes of voter registration. It will now be possible to register as a voter at a mission of the Republic. This bill provides that such citizens must present an identity document or card as part of the registration requirements, but in addition, they will also have to produce a South African passport. There are 125 missions of the Republic across the world, and these missions employ around 800 officials who will be responsible for implementing the proposals in this bill. In 1999, the National Institute for Crime Prevention and Rehabilitation of Offenders secured clarity from the Constitutional Court on the political rights of those who are incarcerated in correctional facilities for sentences without the option of a fine. The IEC has since implemented the decision of the court by facilitating the voting processes for all offenders. The process of amending the Electoral Act presented an opportunity to align the Act with the order of the Constitutional Court in that matter. It is perhaps opportune at this moment to remind the families and friends of those who are in our correctional centers to ensure that these persons, Minister Ndebele, have their identity documents in their possession, as the IEC will undertake voter registration in prisons on a date which the Commission is yet to announce. Our department, I'm pleased to announce, is in dynamic contact with the Correctional Services Department to ensure that inmates who qualify for citizenship are indeed issued with their ID documents. In order to secure the credibility of the elections, it's exceedingly important that the voting process be open and transparent. And in this respect, where voting or counting occurs in more than one room, each political party participating in the election will be entitled to 2 party agents for each room or separate enclosed area. Win or lose, all participating political parties must be comfortable that the voting process was administered in terms of the law and in terms of the Constitution. The increase in the number of party agents is yet another opportunity to open the space for political parties to fully participate in the electoral process. May I also add that the report of Census 2011 indicates that there are 31.4 million South Africans who are 18 years and above, and thus eligible to participate in the electoral process by way of registering as voters and voting when elections are called. The National Common Voters Roll presently has only 23 million voters registered on it. This House must surely be motivated to ensure that the registration percentage is increased significantly ahead of the next elections. It is our collective and historic duty to ensure that the plus minus 8 million unregistered South Africans are sufficiently motivated to participate in the electoral process. May I take the opportunity, Madam Deputy Speaker, to thank the chairperson and all the commissioners of the ISC and members of staff for their excellent work and their continued dedication to the task of ensuring that our country is and remains an excellent example of a democracy at work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. I now call upon the Honourable Mawunye.
Thank you, House Chairperson, Honourable Deputy President, Honourable Ministers, Honourable Deputy Ministers, comrades, Members of Parliament. Once again, the two arms of our government, namely the legislature and the executive, are demonstrating the caring nature of our government. Allow me, therefore, to prompt you to recall that Section 19.3, subsection 3, paragraph A of the 1996 Constitution of the Republic of South Africa states, and I quote, "Every adult citizen has the right to vote in elections for any legislative body established in terms of the Constitution and to do so in secret. Through this electoral amendment bill, we send a clear message to our people that we shall spare no effort in our endeavor to protect their right to dignity and equality as entrenched in Section 10 and 19 of the Constitution. We, in the same vein, take notice of the wise words of the Constitutional Court in the 1999 case of August and others versus Electoral Commission and others, when it said, and I quote, "The universality of the franchise is important not only for nationhood and democracy. The vote of every citizen is a badge of dignity and of personhood." Quite literally, it says that everybody counts. Our message today is that every South African counts, and because of that, it is our duty to ensure that, as far as it is reasonably practical, all citizens are afforded the opportunity to wear their badge of dignity and personhood. House Chairperson, the Electoral Law Amendment Act 34 of 2003, which amended the Electoral Act 73 of 1998, had the effect of disenfranchising persons sentenced to imprisonment without the option of a fine by preventing them from registering as voters and also preventing them from voting whilst in correctional centers. However, unsentenced detainees and detainees incarcerated because of their failure to pay fines imposed on them retain their right to register and vote. In the 2003 case of Minister of Home Affairs versus National Institute for Crime Prevention and the Rehabilitation of Offenders, called it NICRO, the Constitutional Court declared the provision of the Amendment Act 2003 inconsistent with the Constitution and therefore invalid. In other words, the court found no justification in denying persons sentenced to imprisonment without the option of a fine the right to register and vote. The decision to extend the franchise to persons sentenced to imprisonment without the option of a fine is given effect by the Clause 4 of the bill we now commend to this august House. Clause 4 amends Section 8 of the Principal Act to provide for the deletion of the provision that the Chief Electoral Officer may not register a person as a voter if that person is serving a sentence of imprisonment without a fine, without the option of a fine. Every citizen does indeed count, and his or her perceived or real offending conduct is insufficient as justification to deny him or her of the badge of dignity and personhood. The right to vote imposes an obligation upon the state not merely to refrain from interfering with the exercise of the right, but to take positive steps to ensure that it can be exercised. The Principal Act is based on the principle that voters must vote in the voting district for which they are registered. I, however, would like to draw your attention to two exceptions to this general rule. The first is the procedure provided for in Section 24A, whereby a voter who cannot vote in his or her voting district on polling day may on that day apply to the presiding officer at a voting station in another district for permission to vote in that district. If the person is seeking to vote outside the province in which he or she is registered, the presiding officer may permit the voter to vote in the national election only. The second exception permits voters in circumstances where they will not be able to vote at the voting station in the voting district for which they are registered on polling day, to apply for a special vote within the stipulated time which will permit them to vote before polling day. In the same vein, Section 33 of the Principal Act provides that a registered voter who is unable to vote in his or her district on polling day must be allowed a special vote if inability to vote is due to temporary absence from the Republic for purposes of a holiday, a business trip, the attendance of a tertiary institution or an educational visit, or participating in an international sport event. In the 2009 case of Rechter versus Minister of Home Affairs, the Constitutional Court found that Section 33 exclude other voters who are absent from the Republic on voting day from participating in elections. The court said, and I quote, it cannot be said that, however, that requiring a voter to travel thousands of kilometers across the globe to be in the wrong voting district on voting day is exacting reasonable compliance from a voter, close quote. The court concluded that the section is inconsistent with the Constitution and as a result, ordered that the language of the section should be amended to make clear that special votes should be extended to any registered voter who will be absent from the Republic on polling day and who gives notice in the prescribed time for the Chief Electoral Officer. Honourable members, it is from this background that I commend to you Clause 6 of the bill before the House, which substitutes Section 33 of the Act to provide for the Commission to allow a person who applies for and cast a special vote prior to election day in the election for the National Assembly if that person cannot vote at the voting station in the voting district in which he or she is registered as a voter due to, among other things, being absent from the Republic. it should be apparent to honourable members that the general principle that voters must vote in their voting district for which they are registered remains. It is also clear that the second exception now covers all registered voters who are absent from their country on voting day. However, those who are absent from the country as well as those absent from their provinces may not cast a provincial vote. Indeed, every citizen counts. We should bear in mind that the obligation of the government to take steps to ensure that the right to vote is exercised should not be unreasonable, burdensome on the government. I submit to you that since provincial votes would have to be counted in the voting stations where the voter was registered, transporting provincial votes cast abroad to the more than 20,000 voting districts throughout the country will constitute a logistical burden on the Commission. Chairperson, I take this time to encourage all South Africans to register to vote and to vote as provided for in the law. It remains our unshaken conviction that the vote of every citizen is a badge of dignity and personhood, and we shall always endeavor to protect the rights to dignity and equality of all South Africans. House Chair, I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable De Vreites.
Thank you, Chair. The right of every citizen to vote is one of the foremost rights for which the struggle against apartheid was fought. It is a right which we believe is essential to uphold in its entirety. Section 19 of the Constitution ensures that all citizens have the right to vote in elections for every and any legislative body. At present, the bill restricts the rights of some citizens to vote only on the National Assembly ballot. This unfairly limits the ability of citizens to exercise their rights, and as such, this bill is unconstitutional and cannot be supported. Firstly, South African citizens abroad under this bill are restricted from voting on the ballot for provincial legislatures. This is an unacceptable restriction on the rights accorded to them by the Constitution as citizens of the Republic. During committee deliberations, the DA argument was not accepted on the grounds that it was impractical, despite the fact that we offered very practical solutions to allow citizens abroad to register and vote on the provincial ballot. Secondly, the current system and the Electoral Amendment Bill restrict the ability of South African citizens who reside inside the Republic from fully exercising their right to vote. While the bill now provides for a special vote for citizens who will be absent from their voting district on the day of elections, it still restricts citizens from casting their vote outside of their province. The DA believes that there should be no restrictions whatsoever on the ability of citizens to exercise their rights to vote, including voting from outside one's province. The DA thus believes that this is a major restriction of every citizen's constitutional rights. In order to ensure that these rights were upheld in legislation, the DA's Honourable James Self introduced a private members' bill which, amongst other things, aimed to ensure that all citizens abroad and within the Republic would vote in both the National Assembly and provincial legislature elections, regardless of provincial boundaries, and this bill was rejected by the committee. Undeterred, the DA attempted to uphold the rights of all South Africans by proposing amendments in committee on the current Electoral Amendment Bill to ensure that all citizens can fully exercise their rights to vote. This, again, these amendments were rejected. The DA will now continue to fight in the courts to ensure that the South Africans' elections are free, fair, and allow all citizens full access to voting. During the committee process, the Commission itself conceded that this restriction on the rights of citizens is a problem, but describes the issue as minute. As such, the ANC chose to ignore what everyone confesses is indeed a problem. The bill, in its current form, will not pass the test of constitutional muster. The IEC and the ANC argue that with the low number of people who vote abroad and outside of their home provinces, such a problem is not material. This is simply not true. More importantly, this belies the very intention on which the Constitution was founded. It undermines the lives lost in the struggle to ensure that the right to vote was never again restricted. The DA will not stand back and allow our democracy to be weakened by this bill. Therefore, the DA cannot support this bill, and we urge the House to do the right thing and reject this bill as unconstitutional and unacceptable in our democracy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable McIntosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Mr. Chairman, this bill is not perfect, but it has made changes which our courts have asked us to make, famously the Richter case, and it is unfortunate that the DA seems to think that it can hold pistols to the head of a committee in this Parliament by threatening it with legal action. That there are huge problems about provincial votes, and maybe one should go and have a look at what happens to people who vote internationally from other countries in the world. It's essentially voting for the national vote, and the problems and the practicalities of giving people provincial votes at this stage is extremely difficult. And the DA doesn't have to come and try to say that it'll go to court. Honourable Self's bill was brought to this House, and Honourable Self wouldn't even sit here during the debate on the bill because he was so embarrassed by the Honourable De Freitas and his caucus's unhappiness with that bill. And now he comes and holds it out as the law of the Medes and the Persians. Mr. Chairman, already the politicians are getting ready for the elections. I don't know what meetings the ANC in this Parliament has been having yesterday and today, but one can see they're quite excited. Because one gets the mood of it. And I suspect they're busy working out their lists and who's going to stay and who's going to leave this Parliament. But that's what politics is about. And you know, that's why we've pushed this bill through so quickly. And I must compliment Mrs. Maggie Maunye, our chair lady, and also our committee. Because we want this bill, the Commission needs to pass regulations, it's got to go through the National Council of Provinces, and politicians know there's an election in April or May next year. So we're very keen to get this bill. People have already mentioned the important parts of the bill and why it's here. It's a short bill, it's a technical bill. I do want to make one plea, and that is in Section 2, where it said if you vote overseas, you must have your passport and your ID document. You know, Mr. Chairman, people often, when they go overseas, don't take their ID documents, but they always take their passports, and their passport has their ID number on it. So it's very easy in our missions to simply have a look at the website of the IEC. They can pick up whether the person's registered, etc. So I would like to suggest that having an ID is not mandatory, but that having a passport, a South African passport, is mandatory. Now, you know, the Electoral Commission is, as we would say in isiZulu, igugu gwagiti. It's our darling, it's our sweetheart, it's our favorite organization for us as politicians. And I don't think we must do anything to undermine it. And I want to express my concern at Honourable Hlengwa's statements earlier this afternoon, because I don't think we must do things to undermine the IEC. We also need to recognize, and it's recognized in this bill, because I think all of us have been at hot, excited polling stations, sometimes in rural schools. They're using more than one classroom, and it all gets very exciting and very pressurized. And if you come from KwaZulu-Natal, where I come from and where my experience is in elections, things can get quite hot.
Chairperson.
Yes, Honourable Member. The Honourable Member, I'm going to give you a chance to repeat what you said because I couldn't pick up the translation.
lo khuluma uyawazi namagano umhlonishwa lo khulumayo.
Continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I expected to continue. The point is that in clause 10 of this bill, they're creating a right to appoint party political observers at a polling station, not simply in one of the classrooms or tents or whatever it is. So you can appoint more party agents to keep an eye on what's going on. And I think that reflects the sensitivity to areas which can have areas of conflict. Mr. Chairman, would like, on behalf of COPE, to say we will support this legislation.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Makuba.
The Honourable Chair and the Deputy President, Inkatha Freedom Party welcomes and supports the Electoral Amendment Bill. Given the great importance of the upcoming 2014 national elections, the current fluid geopolitical landscape, and the entry into the political arena of certain new political parties, it is of the utmost importance that we have the necessary legislation in place to ensure a smooth transit to our fifth political dispensation. The IFP supports the rights of South Africans residing outside the country to vote, given that they are able to produce both an identity document and valid passport. Registration to vote must, however, be in person and not by proxy. And these voters should only vote nationally, as voting on a provincial basis would at this stage be logistically unfeasible. We further agree that prisoners serving sentences be taken as registered in whichever area their remand detention facility is situated, as it would be logistically impossible to attempt to register said prisoners in each of their respective residential areas. We have also noted other clauses included in these amendments, which are to effect technical amendments to the bill. Ngithanda ukuthi sihlalo kuyilungelo lawo wonke umuntu ongokuzalwa eNingizimu Afrika ukuba alisebenzise ithuba linikwayo lokuvota, ngoba lokho kusho ukuba nezwi kuko konke okwenzeka eSouth Africa. Ukuze uhlelo lokhetho oluqhubeke kahle kufanele kube khona imithetho ebekwayo ezogada ukuthi konke kuhamba kahle. Siyakweseka ukuthi labo abazoba nezindlela abazithathayo ngalolu suku bakwazi ukufaka isicelo sokuthi bakwazi ukuvota lapho bebhalise khona ngaphambi kokuthatha uhambo. Lokhu kuzokwenziwa uma ukhubazekile nabadala abagulayo abakhulelwe, lokhu kuzobe kwenziwa ngevote eliyispecially elicelwa kuCommission. Siphinde sikwamukela ukubhekelwa kwalezo zikhungo ezisebenzisa izikole lapho kwenzeka khona ukuthi kusetshenziswa amaklasi amabili ngobuningi kwabavoti esikolweni esisodwa. Siyakwamukela ukuthi kube khona ama-party agents amabili iklasi ngalinye. The IFP supports the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mulder.
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Deputy President, colleagues, today is a rather historical day. I hope that the former member, the Honourable Patrick Chauke, out there Northwest, is watching Parliamentary Channel today, because he was the chairperson of the Home Affairs Committee when the ANC very strongly opposed what is in this bill today. So we've been campaigning for this for quite some time, and in the end, we are back here today where Parliament is now going to agree to the proposals in this bill. There was a young man called Henry Lariche who was working abroad in London, and he started the campaign to allow South Africans abroad to vote. Obviously, many others also supported this cause, but in the end, today, here we are, and we are going to amend the electoral bill to make this possible, and I think that's a very positive and a very good step in the interest of all South Africans, citizens who are abroad and cannot vote. Chairperson, I'm not going into the technical issues of this bill. It's been stipulated by the other members of the committee and by the chairperson. However, I find it rather strange that the Democratic Alliance are opposing this bill. I find it very strange. The first point is that the members of the DA in that committee did not oppose this when we voted on this bill in the committee. They didn't do that. So here today, I understand that the DA now comes and they're going to oppose this bill. Now the problem is this. Read the Richter case, the Constitutional Court case. And then I want to say to the DA, you know very well that it's not going to happen that people will also have a provincial vote when they are abroad. You know this. You know this. But what you are doing is you are absolutely extremely opportunistic because you want to play for votes, to try to create the impression out there for South Africans that the DA is the only one fighting for their right. But you know that it's not going to succeed. Once in your life, be responsible and tell the electorate out there the truth. And you know that it's not going to happen. Last but not least, Chairperson, I want to say to the Chairperson of the committee, thank you very much for the way that you've conducted the business of the committee. I think we've done South Africans proud in this respect today, and I only hope that the DA will come to its senses. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Thring. Order, Honourable Members.
Honourable Chair, the ACDP commends the IEC, which has run both general and municipal elections with fairly great competence, resulting in worldwide acclaim and requests for assistance from other countries. The ACDP believes that the IEC will certainly be able to provide similar high standard of national and provincial elections in 2014. This notwithstanding the issues highlighted in a Public Protector's report on certain procurements issued within the IEC, which is the subject of deliberations by an ad hoc committee of this House. The Electoral Amendment Bill seeks largely to improve inclusivity and legitimacy in the electoral process. The ACDP supports the amendments to Section 33 that will enable all registered voters who are outside the country to exercise their voting rights. A more contentious issue relates to the allowing of registered citizens abroad to the right to vote for provincial legislatures. The Constitutional Court in the Richter versus Minister of Home Affairs decision did not find that registered voters abroad may vote for provincial legislatures. If one, however, accepts that the principle that we are allowing citizens living abroad the right to influence the balance of representation in the National Assembly, then surely they should be able to exert the same influence in provincial legislatures. Because such voters must be registered first, it would be a relatively simple matter to establish in which provinces they were resident before leaving the country. The ACDP believes that there is more than sufficient time between now and 2014 general election for the appropriate arrangements to be made to enable voters outside the country to vote for provincial legislatures. Mr. Chair, the ACDP appreciates that this issue is now before the Western Cape Court for decision. But the ACDP believes that it should first have been decided on in the Portfolio Committee and Parliament before the court route was chosen. The DA court challenge then, according to the ACDP, appears to be premature, as Parliament had not yet concluded its legislative function on the bill. It may have been preferable to first have these tabled proposals and then debated them in the Portfolio Committee and Parliament before launching the High Court application.
Honourable Member.
The ACDP also appreciates that the amendments relating to the prisoners' voting rights as a result of the Constitutional Court decision in the Minister of Home Affairs versus Nicro and others. While we have our reservations about the convicted prisoners having the right to vote, the ACDP respects the decision of the Constitutional Court in this regard. While the ACDP, Mr. Chair, has its reservations on the non-inclusion of the provision ballot for expatriates, we will support the bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Ngasela.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Honourable Deputy President, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, my leader of the official opposition, This is an important piece of legislation.
Order, honourable members.
This is a legislation that puts before us a responsibility to ensure that all citizens of our country, black and white, young and old, local and abroad, participate in strengthening our hard-fought democracy. But this bill falls short in addressing the crucial issue of the principle of one person, one vote. Because South Africans who will find themselves elsewhere outside their voting district will not enjoy their right to free franchise. And this undermines democracy and puts our country on a back foot. We need this vote. We need to ensure that everybody enjoys one provincial vote and one national vote. What is difficult to ensure this happens? We have gone in every way possible to ensure that siyaxoxa ngalento kwi-committee, and the ANC bivumelana nathi committee. Eminye imibutho ayino e-committee izomaphi izoxoxa. Abanye bafika belate pha aphinda ahlala imizuzu emibini aphinda baleke bazoxoxa nathi apha namhlanje. Sifuna uqinisekisa into yokuba la majoni siwathumela kula mazwe ayakwazi ukuvotela iphondo no-national. Siqiniseke into yokuba abantwana nibathumelayo bayokufunda kwezi ndawo ngendawo emazweni bayakwazi ukuvotela iphondo no-national. Abantu abayokusebenza bengosomashishini bayakwazi ukuvota iphondo no-national. Abantu abayokuphangela onesi abajikeleza lonke ilizwe ngoba i-ANC ayikwazi ukuza ne-conditions ezi-right of employment bakwazi ukuvota unational nephondo. Now, where is this nation building of the ANC? Where is this patriotism of the ANC? Chairperson, it is clear that this is another ANC, is not the same ANC that fought for freedom in this country. We need a different regime in South Africa. We need a new government, and that government you will see next year. That government, you will see it in Tlokwe, made the Minister of Social Development. That government is already in the Western Cape. That government will be in Gauteng in 2014. Mr. Chairperson, it is clear. It is clear that the ANC does not want this country to grow. Hence, today we say South Africa deserves better. And we cannot, and we will not accept this bill. Sititina abantu kukala. Kukala abantu. Qina mhlali qina. Qina mhlali qina. Uzawuthi shusu nduzi. Into esifunayo kuqinisekisa into yokuba wonke umuntu okweli lizwe ufumana ivote engancikivwa ngokuba esewavizitela eSomalia, wavizitela eChina, wavizitela England. They must enjoy this vote, Minister. And I need to say this finally. The DA will prove you wrong next year. Thank you.
Order. The next speaker is the Honourable Gaum. Order, honourable members.
Chairperson, just want to ask, the Honourable Mkasela says a new government, sir, in your dreams. May I just point out that a small error has been made on the cover of this bill. The words as agreed to by the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, National Assembly, should read as amended by the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, National Assembly. The committee section has corrected this error and the corrected version of the bill has already been distributed. The Electoral Amendment Bill captures judgments of the Constitutional Court in legislation. The Constitutional Court decided in the Richter case that South African citizens ordinarily resident outside South Africa should be allowed to vote. the court did not rule that this right to vote should include a provincial vote. In the Necro case, the court ruled that all prisoners have the right to vote, independent of the nature of their sentences. As could be seen today, all political parties except the DA supports this bill. Not long ago, the DA's Honourable James Self, I'm glad to see him here today, tabled a private member's bill that mirrored the DA's position today, arguing that citizens living abroad and those who are absent from their provinces on voting day be allowed to vote in both the national and provincial elections. After thanking the Honourable Member for his initiative, the Portfolio Committee for Home Affairs, including the DA, rejected this bill unanimously, a bill sponsored by the DA's own national chairperson. Maybe the Honourable Self can tell us today why he has been absent from this House when the committee's report in this regard was considered. When the committee approved the bill before this House 2 days ago, as the Honourable Mulder pointed out, the DA did not object to any clause contained in the bill. It does appear to me that the DA is in disarray, at least its Home Affairs component. Whilst its voting patterns in the committee are confusing when compared to its positions, or the positions of some of them at least, they simultaneously lodged a court challenge against a bill of Parliament at a time when we have not even considered public submissions. In lodging this application so prematurely, the DA did not only undermine Parliament and its processes, but also one of the cornerstones of our democracy, the separation of powers. Effectively, they are asking the court to ignore Parliament and its constitutional mandate by making a law on behalf of Parliament. That is untenable and unacceptable. Parliament reflects the democratic will of the people. Its constitutional mandate, and manifestly not that of the courts, is to make the laws of the land. To appeal to the courts to usurp this role of Parliament is inherently unconstitutional and undemocratic. Maybe a true Democrat such as the Honourable Dean Smuts, I see her here today, can explain to us whether she is prepared to justify this conduct from some of her party members. Section 19 of the Constitution affords the right to vote and the right to free and fair elections to every South African citizen. The Honourable de Freitas seemed to ignore the second very important right included in Section 19 of the Constitution, the right to free and fair elections. Both of these rights are sacred rights. So much more so given our troubled history when the majority of South Africans were denied this basic right to vote. We have a duty to advance, protect and defend both of these rights. Every citizen's right to vote goes hand in hand with every citizen's right to free and fair elections. In a constitutional court, the court found that the right to vote is indispensable and empty without the right to free and fair elections. To overemphasize the right to vote and underemphasize the credibility, integrity, freeness and fairness of our overall electoral process would be wrong, Honourable de Freitas, and unconstitutional actually. Why not also a provincial vote for citizens ordinarily resident abroad and for those who are outside of their province of ordinary residence on voting day? Because central to our electoral scheme for purposes of municipal and provincial elections is ordinary residence. One registers in a voting district where you are ordinary resident. This determines the municipal ward elections you may participate in, the municipal elections you may participate in, the provincial election you may participate in. Put differently, the voting district connects a voter to a ward, to a municipality, to a province and country. In elections, you participate by voting at a voting station in the voting district where you are registered. It is also here in the voting district where votes are counted. Provincial ballot papers are counted in the province where the votes have been cast, in line with the principle that voters in a province must elect their provincial representatives and not voters voting in a different province. Central to voting outside one's province, whether in another province or abroad, is the principle of citizenship. On the basis of your South African citizenship, you are allowed to cast a vote in elections for the National Assembly. In the case of citizens ordinarily resident abroad, there is no direct nexus, no connection with the specific province. To suggest that the last address in South Africa of a citizen living abroad constitutes a nexus between that citizen and a particular province, as the DA has suggested in the Portfolio Committee, is somewhat far-fetched. Without a proper connection, nexus between a citizen living abroad and a province, there is no basis to allow such a person to vote in provincial elections. In addition, it would constitute a logistical nightmare, Honourable De Freitas and Honourable Nkasela, to transport provincial ballot papers from abroad or from elsewhere in South Africa to the provinces where these ballots need to be counted. For this purpose, the ISC will have to rely on external institutions such as couriers and postal services, which will put the transportation of ballot papers beyond the IEC's control. This is a very important point, beyond their control. This may place the integrity of the voters' roll and the credibility, legitimacy, freeness and fairness of our elections in jeopardy. Is that what you want? Some of you seem to want that. In an endeavour to further citizens' right, to further their rights to vote in provincial elections, even though they are outside their province on election day, we have included in the bill their right to exercise a special vote in their voting districts, before leaving their provinces for the other provinces or abroad. This will happen on a special voting day. So we have indeed walked the extra mile on this matter. The DA, or some of them, because I'm not sure what all their positions are these days, the DA seems to want us to run the real risks that have been outlined. Risks that may undermine citizens' constitutional right to free and fair elections, which may in turn leave their right to vote empty, in the Constitutional Court's own words. We have more than 22,000 voting stations in South Africa. In 2009, more than 1.5 million citizens cast national votes in provinces other than their provinces of ordinary residence. If we would now allow them, most likely more than 1.5 million of them this time around, to also cast provincial votes, and these ballot papers have to be transported back to their provinces to be counted, the ISC will lose control over potentially millions of ballot papers when these ballot papers are transported. Do we as the ANC and the other political parties here today, do we want to put our elections at risk like the DA? Certainly not. Do we want to jeopardize our excellent record of free and fair elections like the DA seem to be totally carefree about? No. No, Chairperson, no. Honourable De Freitas pretends to have easy solutions for these matters. He indicated earlier that he offered some practical and easy solutions. He also tells us that these solutions are, he told the committee that these solutions are old news in other countries. But he does not tell us that in Australia, one is not allowed a vote in state elections if you are outside Australia on voting day, or if you are a citizen living abroad, for precisely the same reasons we are advancing. He does not tell us about Angola, and Belgium, and Botswana, and Germany, and India, and the United Kingdom, even the United Kingdom, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, and about Canada, and many other countries with similar arrangements where only national votes are allowed. I can provide you with a list, Honourable Leader of the Opposition. He offers no solution as to the risky transportation of ballot papers from other provinces to a person's home province to be counted there. He offers no solution because he has no solution. He is placing what he perceives to be the DA's interests before the interests of South Africa. The ANC is determined to advance citizens' right to vote within the framework of what is reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society. But we will also protect and advance the right of every citizen to free and fair elections, protecting the legitimacy of the electoral process and the integrity of its cornerstone, the voter's roll. That is our patriotic duty. That is our responsibility as the government of South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker would be the Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I see there's no time on the clock for me. I don't know if
you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Just to a few brief responses. Firstly, to the Honourable McIntosh, and maybe just to explain that the voters' roll will now have 2 segments to it. The first would be for South Africans who reside in South Africa. And the second segment would be for those South African citizens who ordinarily do not reside in South Africa. And it is the citizens who live abroad who will be able to register for the elections at the missions of the Republic abroad. And it is only this category that would be required to have an identity document as well as a passport to register. So it's not the situation that you alluded to, Honourable Member, where people travel abroad but are ordinarily resident in the Republic. Just to say and repeat the point that the Honourable Gam and others have made, we have approximately around 22,000 polling stations in and around the country with around 23 million voters. And clearly, if one allows every voter who is outside of their province to vote on the provincial ballot, the logistics of this is absolutely nightmarish. And the opportunities for mistakes, for ballots to get lost in the post is enormous. Why on earth would we take something that is not broke and try and break it? We are in the business, Honourable Member, for your information, of running legitimate elections. If you allow citizens who live abroad and who haven't lived here for many, many years to vote and to choose the provincial legislature that they wish to vote in, this creates huge opportunity for political parties to skew the outcomes of provincial elections. Let's be honest about it. It's an open secret that the DA intends asking all of its supporters who reside overseas to vote on the Gauteng ballot. In plain speak, this is called vote rigging.
Honourable Deputy Minister, your time has expired.
Not in this country.
Order, Honourable Members. That concludes, order, Honourable Members. That concludes the debate on this bill. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? I now put the question. Those in favour will say aye. And those against, no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairperson, will you please record the objection of the Democratic Alliance?
The objection, order, Honourable Members, the objection of the Democratic Alliance is recorded. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Electoral Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the third order.
Second reading debate, Deeds Registries Amendment Bill.
I now recognize a member of the committee who will introduce the bill.
Chairperson, thank you. Honorable members, the introduction of these amendment bills must be seen against the broader transformation program that the ANC envisages in dealing with land and its registration and the application of property rights. How these are administered and what legislative prescripts should be in place to deal with disputes is addressed in the amendment before us today. What is required is a consistent and coherent legislative transformation tool that will both address the constitutional requirements and the policy objective of the ANC government. In doing this, the need to transform historically systems that were designed under previous political regime whose ideological and philosophical orientation does not reflect the building of a national democratic society, structural, systematic, and process matters that will require major transformation. This is true of the amendment bill. Chairperson, the process of administering the values of the new South Africa has brought with it the need for specific changes to existing legislation. Coupled to this is the campaign of the ANC to root out corruption where we find it within any given system of government. This has meant that, in particular, where it comes to matters of property and its regulation, we have to ensure that we have the requisite legislation and regulations that will inculcate in our society the values that will become one of the first areas we need to visit in order to strengthen historical systems that were designed under previous political regimes, whose ideological and process matters that require major transformation. The Deeds Registry Amendment Bill, B10B 2013, thus proposes certain amendments to the Deeds Registries Act 47 of 1937 to impose a person or description of a property mentioned in this documents. Section 38 of the Act provides for the issuing of certificates of registered title in instances where title deeds become incomplete or unsafe. The Land Survey Act 8 of 1997. A proposed amendment seeks to reflect a reference institution of the heading of is necessary to provide legal since there are two deeds registries located within the Gauteng province. In section it was repealed by the Agricultural Debt Management Act 45 of 2001, the proposed surnames of women. The proposed amendment, which provides for double-barrel surnames, of the definition of deeds registries proposed in Clause 7 of the bill is consequential to the promulgation of the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act 28 of 2002, which provides for the discontinuation of the registration of mineral rights in a deeds registry. In conclusion, Chairperson, the amendments assist in addressing the broader transformation program of the ANC government that and what is envisaged in dealing with fixed property and its registration and property rights and how this is administered. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
It's Registries Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Second reading debate, Sectional Titles Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honourable Matlanyane, who will address the House on the bill.
Chairperson, thank you. We have the responsibility as legislative arm of the state to ensure that the deepening of economic transformation results in tangible changes in ordinary working people's lives. An integral part of the second phase of our transition from apartheid to a national democratic society is the need to accelerate growth and intensify our program of economic transformation. Therefore, in passing legislation, We have the responsibility, Chairperson, to present before this House content of a draft legislation that addresses the spirit and intention of economic transformation. The historic task of dealing with economic poverty and inequality means that each opportunity to bring amendments to principal acts offers us the opportunity to change people's lives through the amendments we are tabling. The National Democratic Society we are busy constructing must be a reflection of the quality of content of legislation we pass. Home ownership reflects an improved standard of living for ordinary people and the movement of the people through the economic and social strata. The home culturally and traditionally holds very significant value to a family. It is more than just an asset which cannot be determined in monetary terms. Sectional title ownership has emerged globally as one of the solutions to an increased need for urban housing against a backdrop of population growth and the demographic trends towards urbanization. One of the main advantages of the sectional title format of home ownership is the provision of true ownership of housing with all its social and economic benefits to more people to affordable costs. Whereas the suitability of the sectional title format to provide housing in an urban environment has been proven, there are certain requirements which, if not met, will inevitably result in a loss of value for homeowners. Sectional title schemes require proper management. Appropriate legislation is necessary to prevent the failure of schemes, which will inevitably lead to owners losing everything. The Principal Act has historically addressed these matters, but changing circumstances dictate that legislation be updated and amended. That is the purpose of the Sectional Titles Amendment Bill B11B of 2013. There has been uncertainty in respect of which architects are qualified to sign certificates stating that a proposed division into sections and common property is not contrary to any operative town planning scheme or statutory plans that may affect the development. The proposed amendment provides clarity in this regard. It also amends the definition of land surveyor in clause 1C of the bill, which seeks to clarify which land surveyors may sign a section 7(2)A certificate, and intends to reflect the correct short title of the Professional and Technical Surveyors Act 40 of 1984. The current definition of a developer provides for the inclusion of an agent or his or her successor entitled to act on behalf of a developer. However, the definition does not include the developer's agent or his or her successor entitled in respect of the approval of development scheme as contemplated in the Act. The proposed amendment provides for such inclusions. Section 15B of the Act provides for issuing of a certificate of registered sectional title in respect of a fraction of an undivided share of a section. The need has been identified to also include provisions in respect of the application by the owner of a section, as well as the lodgement and endorsement of the relevant bonds and title deeds. Clause 4 of the bill, therefore, proposes the addition of new subsections to Section 15B. In conclusion, Chairperson, the amendment bill assists those who are committed to and those who will be coming to sectional titles as a form of ownership. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Sectional Titles Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on National Credit Amendment Bill.
The Chairperson of the Committee, the Honourable Fabs, will introduce the report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Members, honourable members of this House, this is a bill which I think made history here, because it was the first private member's bill to be treated in a different manner. And of course, we accorded it that interest and focus, ensuring, in fact, that all the stakeholders were contacted. In fact, we leaned so far backwards to ensure that it was accorded the same, if not better, treatment of process and procedure that other bills brought to Parliament were from a committee or a minister, that, in fact, when the Honourable Ambrosini was an hour late, due to forgetting his bill was due to be, before the committee after the 2 weeks' notice and reminders, we accorded him, nevertheless, the time to brief us. And, of course, he was profusely grateful on the matter. But we treated him, as well as the bill, with all the processes and procedures that would be demanded of a portfolio committee. And that was, of course, this year, in fact, on the 31st of January. And now you may ask, why did it take us so long to bring it here? Well, the ANC, of course, is a caring government. It is a very caring, and that is an acknowledgement from the Honourable Ambrosini. That's why I'm saying that. Because when he did not return for the final process one day, we heard that he had flu. We rescheduled the bill and learned he was in hospital. We rescheduled it when we learned he was coming out. But it was unfortunate that only in a letter to me, I learned that from him that his was a terminal illness. And I'm sure the House and everyone else wishes him well during this particular part of his life. But having said that, the main issues within the bill, which were later rejected by the committee, was that, you see, there were two clauses. And on his own acknowledgement, the first clause was not the clause that needed to be focused on, and in fact he conceded that he would give way on that one. A number of the stakeholders pointed that they had challenges, and I'm not talking about, if you like, those within the fraternity that are card-carrying members of the ANC, but the financial community, the business community, and many others said that the second one, the suspension of interest, which incidentally already existed, and some credit providers were already offering that. But what this would lead to, in fact, was prolonged debt review. So you would suspend the interest, have this prolonged debt review, but in the end, after 5 years, you would still have to pay it. So you were merely putting off that final day. Secondly, the relationship and the point made in terms of the accumulation of interest, credit fees and charges beyond the balance of the unpaid debt, that is already in the Act. The Act, National Credit Act, number 34 of 2005. But having said that, the committee in 2010 did in fact communicate with the Minister our concern that the National Credit Act was not where we wanted it to be, and that the National Credit Regulator needed to be reviewed as well as this Act amended, so that we could seriously tackle some of the flaws. And this has been done. Yes, it was done this year. The Act is now here, and we are going to be dealing with it. But may I add, it was unanimous in the committee, although people in this House will say it wasn't, We don't want piecemeal. We want a comprehensive piece of legislation that will deal effectively with a very serious issue and not something that would just single out one point which would address no.
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
May I say, the ANC, among others, totally support the refusal.
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
Thank you.
I now recognise the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
I move that the report be accepted, adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? There's been a request for declarations. I will now allow for up to 3 minutes, one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration, an opportunity to do so. The DA.
Thank you, House Chairperson. This private members bill is numbered PMB01, and that stands as a testament to the invaluable efforts of Honourable Ambrosini to assert the constitutional right of all members to introduce legislation in this House and to have that legislation properly and seriously considered. Our thoughts continue to be with the Honourable Ambrosini in the struggle he's currently waging. In the past, Chairperson, private members' bills were cut off at the pass by an intransigent ANC majority not interested in seeing any good ideas emanating from outside its own ranks. Whenever a private member's bill was too obviously sensible and positive that it could not be simply blocked, the argument was usually made that similar and more comprehensive legislation was imminent from the executive, and so therefore we should rather wait for that legislation. Sometimes that legislation would be years before it came to this House, as in the National Lotteries legislation, which the DA proposed in 2009 and which came to this House earlier this year. However, the courts have now underscored the constitutional principle that all members can and should influence the legislative agenda at any time they like, and irrespective of what other legislation is being prepared elsewhere in the government. Hence, this very first private members bill submitted by the Honourable Ambrosini under the new rules. Now, Chairperson, at the time that this bill was submitted, there was no comprehensive amendment to the National Credit Act on the table from the Department of Trade and Industry. Indeed, the department told us in committee that such legislation would still take several months before they could present it. It's therefore a victory for opposition oversight that after seeing this bill, the department was able to produce a broader amendment bill in a matter of weeks, not months. But the arguments must never be used, as it was by the ANC in this committee and in the case of this bill, that we should not proceed with piecemeal improvements to legislation because comprehensive legislation from the executive is imminent. This is the argument used to block private members' bills under the old rules, and it seems it is being used anew to block private members' bills under the new rules. We won't stand for that, Chairperson. The fact is, piecemeal improvements to legislation are perfectly acceptable, and we do not need to have comprehensive legislation from the executive before this House can move. Thank you very much.
The IFP.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson, the Honourable Deputy President, Honourable Members. This report marks a huge missed opportunity for our Parliament and our democracy. After 2 years of intense litigation, the Honourable Oriani Ambrosini regained for all of us our constitutional right to introduce legislation. At the core of the legislation was the very bill which this report rejects as being undesirable. It is a simple bill with two simple provisions, which the report itself indicates to be, in fact, desirable. The argument to reject the bill is that of waiting for government to propose to Parliament a comprehensive overhaul of the Principal Act, which will incorporate the amendments proposed by the Honourable Ambrosini. The report explicitly states that the Minister will introduce such bill by the end of this year and makes this the sole reason to reject Ambrosini's bill. This is tantamount to Parliament rejecting its own power of legislative initiative. We have missed the opportunity to fix a few aspects of the Principal Act which all submissions received by the committee had indicated had to be fixed. Throughout the deliberations in the committee, it was very clear that Honourable Ambrosini's bill was desirable, necessary and timely. Yet today we are called upon to resolve that it is undesirable because we believe that the executive should do the work of Parliament. In what was a historic occasion, Parliament has relinquished the opportunity to do the job it is called upon to perform by the Constitution, which is that of legislating. Today, we are making the point that this Parliament is not willing or competent or capable of fixing problems with legislation, their way it seems to be, unless it receives the green light to do so from the executive. The Ambrosini bill should have been an opportunity to reverse the decades of parliamentary impotence, indolence, and subordination to assert the centrality and primacy of Parliament in lawmaking. We have lost this opportunity because the ANC has yet again given proof that it does not understand parliamentary democracy and will not allow members of this Parliament to bring democracy to life. Instead, it wishes members of this Parliament to wait for the dictates of their leaders, cabinets, and party structures, which keeps our democracy at the stage of purer-form exercise far distant from what our Constitution has envisaged. Honourable House Chairperson, on that note, I think I speak for everybody when I once again wish the Honourable Ambrosini a speedy recovery, and we pray that the good Lord will indeed grant him that. And I'm sure the Honourable Minister Molewa, as she howls, she also agrees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The point has been made about the private members' bill, and I think one thing we've learnt in this first bill that's come through, that the people at the table, the committee, the legal advisors of Parliament are all on a learning curve. And I think it's to their credit that they have enabled this first bill to now reach its final conclusion. The other points around the bill, the new National Credit Act that's coming through, they've all been made by colleagues in previous speeches. What, however, I think one must recall is that after Dr. Mario Oriani Ambrosini overslept or missed his meeting for 1 hour, he was so embarrassed and he apologized that he stood and offered all the members of the committee lunch at the Mount Nelson Hotel. And I then said, well, I think he should use his Cadillac to drive the chairlady of the Trade and Industries. And I must say, as a good communist, she looked very comfortable in that Cadillac. We had that interesting human side before us. But we do have two other bills, one of which has also gone through, the one that Honourable James self-proposed on the Electoral Amendment Act. And of course there's coming a very important bill from the Honourable James on indigenous knowledge and intellectual property, a sui generis bill. So we've now will have dealt with three members' bills. But I do believe this has been an important bill, and our whole parliamentary system owes a debt of gratitude to Dr. Ambrosini.
The ANC.
Chairperson, may I address you on a point of order?
What is your point of order, Honourable Member?
My point of order is the uncharitable comment made by Minister Molewa, in which, when the member from the IFP wished Honourable Ambrosini a recovery, Honourable Molewa said he should not recover. And I think that we should all maintain decorum and be charitable towards each other in this House.
Honourable Member, that is not a point of order. That is not a point of order. However, we will request all honourable members to maintain the decorum of the House. Honourable Member, you may proceed. Order, Honourable Member. Proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chairperson, Deputy President of the Republic, the members of the Executive and the members of this august House. the ANC joins all the people of South Africa in wishing the Honorable Ambrosini a speedy recovery from his health challenges. That's the position of the African National Congress. That's why the chairperson also wished him a speedy recovery. That's the position of the ANC. Chairperson, the NCA, the National Credit Act, was the best shield which protected the vulnerable consumers of South Africa against the reckless lenders which are out there in the country. That's why during the financial meltdown of 2008 to 2010, all the countries of the West were looking with high esteem at this act. That's why, as this August House, we must be very careful when dealing with the tools which are respected internationally. Yes, the Honorable Ambrosini came with this amendment, which will not have affected a qualitative change to the lenders of this country. That's why the issue of the comprehensive bill was necessary. Why? Because the new bill, which is now before Parliament, is going to cover all the aspects which was going to raise, but it will go beyond that. One, we know very well one of the challenges of our lenders is that once they have even settled their bills with their creditors, they'll remain for 5 years in the credit bureaus. The next bill which is coming is going to remove them from those credit bureaus within the 7 days when they've settled their bill. So that's the type of revolutionary amendment we wanted. What is also critical, this bill will also regulate the debt counsellors. We know that part of the weak implementation of this bill was that the debt counsellors were able to dump the people they were cancelling at their whim. But now the bill is going to provide a framework for them to exit the system. So this issue of a comprehensive approach is very critical. But this issue of the comprehensive approach of the amendment of this bill was not only coming from the ANC. All the financial institutions in the country were in support of that. That's why the Banking Association of South Africa rejected this bill. That's why the BUSA, the Business Unit of South Africa, rejected the bill in its current form and said that a more comprehensive bill, which will have been negotiated even at NADLEC, will be the best way of moving forward. That's why I call all the members of this House to support the report of the Portfolio Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now put the question again. Are there any objections to the motion that the report be adopted? I now put the question. Those in favour will say aye. Aye. And those against no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairperson, will you please record the objection of the Democratic Alliance?
The objection is noted. And that of the IFP? It's noted. Are there any further objections? No further objections?
Chairperson, would you note?
I've noted you. I've noted you, Honourable Member.
It must be recorded that I did object.
Honourable Member, I've noted it is on the record. You were a bit slow in responding. Honourable Members, the report is accordingly agreed to. That concludes the business for the day and the House is adjourned.